Yeah, I think we're going to find out probably pretty soon. The reality of the position that he plays, and for a freshman to be able to compete right now, I think says a lot about how good maybe he is early in his career. His explosiveness, his understanding of the position, and his intelligence on top of it. You're talking a young man that comes in as a 3/8 student already. So I think you couple all that together and you see him having the ability to learn and grow really fast in our system. But I'm really impressed with Michael. He's had a really good fall camp, and to say he came out of nowhere, I don't know if that's fair, but I think we all had really good expectations for him. But to be where he's at this soon, especially competing for playing time and competing to be a factor for us, that's been really impressive to all of us as coaches. Yeah, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about Ray is, I don't know whether you say overlooked or undervalued. What Ray will always bring to the table is his humility allows him to kind of blend into the scene, and you never see how important Ray is until Ray's not there, and I think that's in our locker room. I think that's on the practice field. It's certainly when you turn that videotape on from a game, it's on game day, and so he's one of those guys that I think his humility allows him to be overlooked at times in some way, shape, or form. But I think if you ask every player in our program, obviously with him getting voted captain, and you ask every coach in our program, I think there's a great understanding of his value to our program. I think obviously those two were great players, but you look at their receiving core, and there is some veteranness to their receiving core. Some guys that, on top of those two other young men, were certainly beneficiaries of having some leadership, and some of those guys that looked like they had great careers for South Dakota State. But at the end of it, whether you have great tight ends, you have great receivers, somebody's got to get them the ball, and you just hit on it. I think the whole success ratio comes around the talent of that quarterback. And I'm beyond impressed with his ability to move, his ability to create big plays. Their success comes from his ability to create those big plays. And I'll tell you, I don't know if I could be any more impressed with a young man that's had a 4-year career like he has, and what he's been able to do there. As his level of play has risen, so has their success. And last year you see him going into the Final Fours and to the Final Four of the playoffs. I mean, a lot of that credit has to go to his play and his ability to handle and maneuver that offense. And he's in complete control out there. And so that, for me, a lot of respect from afar watching him play. Yeah, I think that, we're really fortunate to have two guys in that room that really benefited, I think, from the humility, the character, the work ethic of Joel, and that's Willie and Marcel. Marcel's a guy in our locker room anyways who's just got an infectious personality. He, like David on offense a year ago, he was a guy that I think was a spark plug for our football team because he plays the game the right way. He's one of our hardest workers, and he's a guy that's got an electric personality in our locker room. Everybody flocks to Marcel. But I think the consistency that Joel brought and the humility, and Willie and Marcel as a young player, Willie as a guy that's continuing to grow as a football player, I think those two really grew and learned a lot. And it's again, that's where you're trying to build a program rather than a team. That team sees how one of the best player acts and carries himself, and then finally I think it sits in where you've got actual visual evidence in front of you saying, man, this is how I need to carry myself, this is how I need to act, because the consistency that this guy plays with is really what's going to give us the best chance to be successful. And I think those two were certainly, very fortunate. Jake Hummel's another guy, obviously Orion. Those guys were really fortunate to have Joel there and be able to watch the humility that he went about his business with. Yeah, well, I think if anybody told David he wore down, he'd be upset. So we won't do that. But I think the reality of it is if you look at our team a year ago, there's two guys that we have great confidence in, Johnny Lang and certainly with Kene, if you look where he was at the end of his freshman year. And both those guys weren't available to us. Both guys injuries and dealt with injuries. And so now you get two guys back that at least have health. And one of the things I think in fairness to those guys is those guys are earning the right to play as well. And I think the position that running back position, if you just have one guy, that's really hard. And we're fortunate because you got Mike Warren, who certainly had great success. you know, you look at what the talent of those two other young men that I've already mentioned, and then Sheldon Croney. You know, I think if you talk about growth in our program from really, I thought saved us last year at the end of the football season, came in, stepped in, played great football, had a tremendous spring, had a great fall camp, then I think you feel really confident in that group as a whole. And so, you know, again, I know there's only one football, but I think the reality of it is those guys are earning the right to play as well. And so instead of saying, man, we're trying to save David, we feel like, gosh, we've got some really good options, and how do we continue to, you know, put those guys in the best position to help our team be successful? Well, you know, I think for the first time since we've been here, you feel really confident about the tight end position. And you knew there was really good players there a year ago, but you know, they're so much like offensive linemen. Everybody wants to get those tight ends on the field. And you know, thank goodness nobody's asked me yet about how many catches the tight ends have had. So I'm Randy, I know it's coming. But the reality of it is that position's like the offensive line. You know, there's such a physicality to that position as well, that you want the growth and development to happen. And now you see Chase at almost 255 pounds. You see Charlie Kohlers at 260 pounds. You see Dylan Sainers, you know, at 282 pounds. They're maturing, you know, and not only do they give you flexibility in the pass game, but in the run game, they allow that offensive line to create gaps and help you do some things that, you know, we really haven't had the ability to do. And I think it's huge. And one guy we can't overlook is obviously, you know, Sam Seambuckner, and what Sam's meant to our football program and our football team, because he has been physically mature enough over the last 2 years to help us. And when we play good football, he's certainly been a key asset to us. Well, you know, and I've said this a lot about, you know, I've said this so much about watching the Kansas State program from afar. When, and our society doesn't allow this to happen, right? We're such a knee-jerk reaction society that really those legendary coaches that have said, I'm going to build something, I'm going to stay, and I'm going to do it the right way, those are hard to find. They're almost dinosaurs today in our profession. And, you know, here's the result. The result is what you get at Kansas State, what you got at South Dakota State. You get tradition, you get consistency, you get expectations, and you know, those things don't die, and it's not cyclical. It just continues to grow and get better. And I think that's one of the things that I have such a respect for, you know, coming from a program like that as a collegiate player and playing in that program where, you know, Coach Karras was that same type of coach and kind of ushered in that same type of success. For me, I appreciate it because that's what I grew up with. That's what I know. You know, the two coaches that are my greatest mentors, my high school coach who, you know, in the Ohio High School Hall of Fame, the winningest high school coach in the state of Ohio, who's been in our high school program now for going into his 34th season, and Coach Karras the same way. You're talking about two coaches that, you know, they've defined a culture and they've set that culture and they've lived it, and I think that's certainly what Coach is doing at South Dakota State, and it's really fun to watch and you appreciate it from afar for sure.